Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Ananta Subedi. He's a rheumatologist. Today's Kevin MD article is The Four Foundations That Sustain Physicians Through Burnout and Balance. Ananta, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin, so much. I have been hearing about you for a long, long time since I started my medical career, but I got to meet with you and talk with you, and I'm so glad that you accepted my article.
All right. Well, thanks again for sharing your story. So just tell the listeners a little bit about that story briefly, and then we'll talk about your article.
Absolutely. So my journey in medical career started from Nepal. I'm originally from Nepal, finished most of my training, including medical school. And I also did some work there for a couple of years before moving on to the US. And when I was in my medical school, we were fortunate to get a lot of good training from some of the good mentors, some of the good instructor, and they were from US. So I got opportunity to learn about a little more about healthcare system in the US. And I even used to read books from Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, and Duke University. So I always had that dream that, I wish I could get some training from some of the mavens in medicine. That's why I thought that US will be a good place for me to get the further training in internal medicine residency as well as rheumatology. And that's why I jumped into this boat of getting to the US. And while I was trying to prepare for the board, I also had some financial issues, so I had to work a little bit. And then I even spent a year in China as a part of the preparation for the board and also getting some financial stability. So that's why I spent a year in China teaching the medical school on basic sciences. I had a lot of experience and interest in physiology, pathophysiology. That's what I did after my medical school training, and then eventually came to the US and finished my residency from Good Samaritan Hospital, which is based in Baltimore, which is one of the affiliate hospital of Johns Hopkins. And I was so fortunate enough to talk with and learn from some of the in rheumatology. That's how I got into rheumatology from Hopkins training, and then eventually did my fellowship at the NIS Bethesda, where I finished my fellowship training.
All right. Your Kevin MD article is titled The Four Foundations That Sustain Physicians Through Burnout and Balance. For those who didn't get a chance to read your article, tell us what it's about.
So absolutely. Now, as I have been thinking in my career, now I started as an employed physician. I was an employed doc, a rheumatologist in one of the big healthcare system in the Raleigh area called WECMed. And I was going through this career. And then after that, I feel a little more uncomfortable with that job. There was not a lot of growth. So I jumped into the CPAP, starting my own private practice. And I was fortunate to get one of my other colleagues whom I know from another friend. So we team up together and started our private practice. And as I was transitioning from different career paths, I was always thinking and asking that question is, what truly brings happiness to me? So I was asking that question all the time. Is it opening a private practice? Is seeing patients, making them feel better? So that question always haunted me on the back. And I was thinking, does it truly matter, what I do or how much money I make? Does that truly make me feel happy? And the question was no. So I always had that, from this level, what's the next level? From residency, then fellowship, attending, opening the practice. So that was not very fulfilling. So I was asking a bigger question of what makes me truly fulfilled. And I was trying to create a framework. And that's why I created this framework I call a 4F, the 4F fuel of lasting joy and happiness. That's why I created this article. And the 4F that I discussed in that article was faith, family, friends, and fulfillment. So those are the four I call pillars for lasting happiness. And as I relate that 4F to the current problem of, we are in a very negative world where we think of a lot of negative things. We think of what is happening wrong, what is the wrong happening around us. So that's why I wanted to create something more positive. So that was my effort of creating some positive vibe in the world, writing that article of 4F. And what it tells us is, to be happy, we need to focus on those four pillars, which includes faith, family, friends, and fulfillment. Now, faith, many of you might be aware why it's important to be grounded on bigger self. Now, you might even call it a God, guru, or book, or any type of higher figure, more than just the humans, more than just the world, or more than just the nature. So it's more of a supernatural force that make you feel grounded. That's by faith. Now, friends is another important, where the friends will help you get that support in your career, in your personal life, or whenever you have any problem, or when you have happiness, that is where you spend most of your time with your friends. And so is your family, right? So family is what keep you grounded, what give you all the support, good times, and also on the bad times too. And then the last one was the purpose, right? A bigger purpose of serving other people, serving your family, taking care of your kids. So that's my other fourth pillar, the bigger purpose. It could be in your family, taking care of your kids, taking care of your family, or even at your job where you feel very fulfilled helping other people. In particular, in healthcare, right? We live in a stressful environment where there's a lot of pressure, work pressure, administrative pressure. But if you have that bigger purpose of serving your patients, serving your bigger community, then you feel fulfilled, even in those stressful situations.
Sometimes in medicine, as you know, it could be all consuming, where it takes up a disproportionate amount of your life where you're not able to do some of those other pillars. So, how do you do it as a rheumatologist? How do you balance the demands of medicine with some of these four F's, these pillars that you talked about?
Absolutely. Now, I even call those 4F are your fuel for lasting happiness, right? So that's why now it depends on your part of your career where you are, right? Now, as we talk about this integration, now we used to talk about work-life balance. Now, that term is a misnomer. Like you cannot balance both things together. So depending on your career path, sometimes you need to focus on one particular area. For example, if you are in your residency or medical school, you focus on your bigger purpose of completing your medical school, completing your training program so that you can be a good doctor or you
Mhm.
can be a good professional. So at that point of the career, you focus on your career or purpose. Now, when you are done, now you focus on your family, friends. So I think having a more of a work-life integration is what I call is more important rather than trying to balance everything together. So I think balancing is important. And when you try to balance, we have to ask a true question. What is truly important to me at this part of your career? So for a medical student, finishing up your medical school might be the most important thing to do. You may not be able to focus too much with your friends or too much with your family. So you focus on that area at that part of your life. Now, when you have all of those, then you start thinking about faith, connecting with higher, either you could God or any other things that keep you grounded so that you feel more fulfilled in your overall career.
Now, give us an example for mid-career physicians. We have a lot of mid-career physicians who write on Kevin MD and appear on the show,
Mhm,
and they're feeling burnt out and
mhm.
unable to have all of these parts of their lives thriving. So, how do you do that? How do you integrate some of these pillars into your work, and what does that look like for you?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. And if I reflect by myself, like if I go back on time and think of myself when I was in my fellowship, right? And my fellowship, I need to focus on my training, right? That's why I have to focus. But fortunately, I have so many good mentors. My program director was so supportive, even though I had a lot of family issue because of illness with my little one, but
Hmm.
he supported me so much. So I think one of the most important is asking for help, right? And then also reflecting on how you are feeling every day. You need to ask yourself, am I feeling good? Do I need to ask for help? And right now we live in an era where there is so much resources available. It could be the coach, and I'll give you my personal example. Now, one of the major life transformation happening in my life was when I hired a coach.
Mm.
Now, if you might be thinking of why I need to hire a coach, if you look back, some of the most successful people, they have coaches behind them. You may not know, but all of them do hire coaches, either for the mindset, either for your personal growth, speaking, helping their business. So you always need some support from a coaches. And I always think of coach as a person who can tell you your blind side, right? We sometimes as human
Yeah.
have some blind side. So your coaches will give you that blind side. So asking for a coach, or even now these days with the AI, you can use so much AI tools to help you find your blind side and also help support, improve your efficiency, improve your mindset, improve your financial freedom or financial knowledge. So all of those tools you can use to understand where you are and where you want to go. So having that goal of where you are now and where you want to go is the key. I think that is what, based on my personal experience.
So, what was that coaching like for you? So, take us into some of those coaching sessions. A lot of physicians, like you said, sometimes don't feel the need to hire a coach for things like mindset. So, how did a coach in particular turn your life around, and tell us about some of the sessions that they've gone through with you?
Absolutely. So now the coach, he was I was part of a mastermind program, and he's a physician too, who runs and most of the doctor in that group were doctors. So we had a common theme is all of were looking for some ways on how we improve our quality of life. Now, most of them were very successful physicians, but they were burned out or they were not happy with their career path. So they were looking for better options. So that was the community of all the doctors. So I was able to learn from each other. They were a lot from the private practice area. A lot of them they were investing on other alternative assets, including investment in crypto, investment in real estate. So it was a good community that helped me to understand what else is available out there beyond my regular clinical practice. And even in clinical practice, since I didn't have a lot of business training in medicine, right? As you know, we get trained on all the art and science of medicine, but nobody will teach you the business side of medicine. So that's why that mastermind program also helped me learn the business side of medicine. That was very powerful. And it also helped me and open up my mind on what is the importance of mindset, particularly the importance of having a growth mindset where you don't worry about problems, you don't worry about mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes. So I think that was a powerful thing. The change of mindset was the most important thing that happened with the coaching program. That's why I will highly recommend, even though it's an investment, but it's an investment on yourself, right? Unless you invest on yourself, even though you might earn as much money possible, it will not bring the fulfillment or the happiness. That's why hiring a coach, one of the best things that we did as my personal journey, and that helped me improve my personal journey.
So I just want to emphasize that pillar of fulfillment. So for some physicians, that fulfillment doesn't necessarily have to come from clinical medicine, right? And
Absolutely.
just like you talked about in your coaching session, there are other avenues outside of clinical medicine that can contribute to that pillar of fulfillment.
Absolutely. And that's one of my goals too. Right now, I have been through a lot. I have a lot of ups and downs in my career. So one of my fulfilling long-term goal is also maybe at some point I'm also thinking of helping my fellow colleague. Particularly, I want to focus on the international medical graduate who have to go through a lot of painful steps. And even even after being attending, they are not fulfilled. They are still struggling seeing patients, struggling making some enough on having some good finances. They are struggling all of those, and they don't know all of those tools available. So I want to be their guiding coach. So that's my long-term goal too, as a fulfilling career. Even though I want to practice medicine, that is what keep me fulfilled. But helping those fellow physicians who are in burnout or who are not satisfied, I want to give them some guidance based on my prior experience. That's my other long-term goal.
Now, tell me about those physicians who may be stuck in clinical medicine or a job that takes up so much of their time and resources and yet is not fulfilling. You mentioned your four pillars, the four F's, right? Friends, family, faith, and fulfillment. But for those physicians who don't know where to start and may find just jumping on those pillars overwhelming, just give them some advice in terms of how they can get started.
Absolutely. I think that goes back to the basics of how you make some behavioral changes, right? I go back to the basics. Like to make those behavioral changes, first you need to be aware, right? You need to be aware that there is a problem. So I think a self-reflection, I think that's the key. Now, when I look back my career, one of the best thing I did or best habit that I started was journaling. I think that was the game changer in my career, where I start writing my thoughts, expressing my thought to myself, and then doing some retrospection where I thought about myself. What am I? Where am I heading? Is the right path for me? And then from that reflection, then I start creating some action plan. And then I start thinking about, oh, this is a problem I'm having now. And this is where I want to go from here, and then making that path, right? So you need to have a good action plan. So that's why I usually think of all of this as understand where you are now, ask the tough question, and be honest with yourself. And then journaling is one of the way of being honest with yourself. And if you are stuck, like any of you who are listening to the podcast, if you are feeling that you are stuck, first sit down, quiet time with the nature, and then start journaling, and then that will give you an idea of where you are now. And make some plan. Like if in case your goal is to open a practice, look at other people who have already done it. So they could be your guide and they could be your mentor. Now, you don't have to be physically present with them, but you can learn from their books. You can learn from their podcasts. You can learn from their journey. So that will be your biggest teacher, right? They will teach you how to get there. So that's why I think journaling, thinking about self-reflection is what I call. Self-reflection might be the best thing to do so that you know where you are and then what are the resources available out there so that you can get to the next level.
We're talking to Ananta Subedi. He's a rheumatologist. Today's Kevin MD article is The Four Foundations That Sustain Physicians Through Burnout and Balance. Ananta, tell us some take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
So I think the biggest takeaway is if you feel stuck, if you are unhappy where you are, either in your clinical practice or in your academic setting, always look for options, right? There's always new options. Always talk with your colleague, try to find a mentor or a coach, or try to read some books which will help you get unstuck. Now, at this point in the era where we have so much resources, either human resources or artificial intelligence, AI, which can be your biggest resources to get unstuck. So you don't have to be feeling stuck in your career. And always look at those 4 pillars, because at the end of the day, we need to be fulfilled on what we are doing. Either you could be a clinician taking care of patients, or it could be a private practice, or you could be an academic setting or research. Whatever you do, you need to look at those 4 pillars and ask the question where you are on those 4 pillars, where you need to focus on, where you are lacking. So having that idea of where you are now will help you get unstuck, and then you can focus on those 4 pillars of faith, family, friends, and fulfillment. And that will be your fulfilling career.
Ananta, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting, and I'm so excited to share my story with you all. Thank you. Bye-bye.